Before drawing with pastels, I made a quick sketch on paper to outline the big silhouettes and details. Usually I don't make a very detailed underdrawing, but if you feel more confident having a well-made underdrawing, then spend more time and make a drawing you prefer. I think it would be better to print out the portrait and have it next to your paper or canvas, of the same size with your work. You can even literally measure the big things, like the head's width and height, and then make sure that they match your sketch. I like to start off with a graphite pencil like HB or B, but not too soft because it can make paper dirty. It is important for me to outline the main things from the beginning. I mean to draw the eyes on the right place, not too far from each other. Make them not bigger or smaller than they are. When you outline the nose, make sure it is not too long or short. Check the tip of the nose, sometimes beginners make it wider than it is. I prefer to follow a simple step-by-step technique. Here it is. The first step is underdrawing, a simple quick sketch on paper or canvas. Step 2 is underpainting. I call it so even though we mostly use this word for painting and not for drawing. Underpainting is the first layer of colors, or sometimes only one color like umber burnt. The third step is overpainting. Again, I'm using this word for pastels, because pastels are very close to oil paints. I don't insist on following the same technique, and you may use any other you personally like. But to avoid mistakes, I think we need a step-by-step instruction. The other thing I want to talk about before you start drawing is pencils and paper. Paper can be very different, more or less expensive, have different colors and textures and so on. I like to use special pastel paper with a light tint, not simply white. Usually I prefer a light ochre tinge, which is very fine for the skin tones. White paper can be difficult for beginners because it is not easy to see the skin tones right on white. Paper can be more or less textured, and I like to use less textured paper for portraits, because a heavy texture will definitely disturb a lot when you work on a face that is very smooth and soft. If you watched my previous videos, you might have noticed that I like to cover the whole face with one tone that is close to the semitones. I do the same in this drawing too. I cover the face with red ochre and then add yellow ochre to make the color warmer. I like to start with brighter colors and then darken them down where it is necessary. But if you feel better to start with less strong colors, you can use light sepia, for example. If you made a good underdrawing, you can feel how easy it goes now when you got pastels in your hands. You don't have to correct the drawing and can concentrate on colors. As you may notice, I am putting very rough strokes of red ochre, but I don't smooth the strokes. It is always like that in the beginning, when we start from a lively sketch. But at some point we need to make all those strokes softer, and I like to use a special blending stamp like you see, or simply a piece of an eraser, if you don't have a blending stamp. I also like to use it as a kind of a pencil to correct some small details or adjust their shapes. I always make small adjustments of my underdrawing, even when I start to put colors, and I would say it is one of the most important things in drawing or painting. Once in a while we need to come back and make sure that the basic things are correct. I keep on working on the skin tones and softening them down with the blending stamp. I have already put enough pastel and now I would like to spread it over the portrait. Here we should be a little bit more careful, and don't forget that the head has its own structure and we are supposed to demonstrate it in the drawing. You might notice that when I press the stamp harder, I make the tone darker. I like to use this option when I want to darken some areas and don't want to use another color. I would say I like to sculpt with the stamp, because it is so easy to demonstrate the main planes of the head and tonal changes using this tool. In my opinion, it is very important to know how the main planes of the head change, because otherwise it would be almost impossible to make a good realistic portrait. Right now I got a titanium white pencil in my hand to add lighter strokes into the head. If you look at the original, you will notice that the head's construction is well seen, which is helpful when you want to learn drawing. I put some white and Venetian red around the cheekbones and under the eye to show the changes in the structure of the head. I am darkening the side plane of the nose using ochre yellow. In my previous tutorials I mentioned many times how important it is to remember about the light source. Here I want to remind you again. As the light comes from above, the head is mostly in the strong light and has a few shadows only, and the eye sockets under the nose and the cast shadow from the head on the collar. I would say it is more difficult to draw when there is no big shadow, like for example in The Girl with the Pearl Earring by Vermeer, which I drew in my previous tutorial. I have got charcoal in my hand to make the first strokes of the beard. Please don't press too hard, because the beard isn't actually black. I make the first layer darker and will put lighter tones then. But if it is difficult for you, please use any lighter color instead of charcoal. Sepia, for example, or amber burnt. Right now I go back to the eye to add more light around. I use my ochre yellow and titanium white. If you look at the original, you will notice that this area isn't as dark as the shadow in the eye socket. It happens because the light doesn't get into that area, and we see only its reflection in the shadow. If you really want to improve your skills, I would highly recommend making many studies of the old masters. Please don't expect to get very close to them very soon, but you will notice how much better you become in drawing and painting if you make even one good copy. You can even copy a part of a painting, or draw only one facial detail like an eye or ear, and that would help you a lot. I like to use a limited palette like the old masters did. This portrait is a good example that we do not need lots of different colors to make good realistic painting. Right now I'm working on the forehead bone with my ochre yellow, making this area darker to show how the bone turns down. With the help of the dark brown pencil I'm working on the mustache. Remember that there is a cast shadow on the surface of the face from the mustache. It is not very visible, but we have to draw it, otherwise the mustache will look flat. You need to keep in mind that there is always a cast shadow from any subject. Then I took my white pencil to draw a few single hairs of the beard. Please remember to keep your pencil sharp, especially for those small details. Make sure you understand the anatomy basics and know how to draw an eye, nose, lips, and ears. Make several simple drawings of those details to learn their structure. Don't hurry up to paint. Believe me, if you make a good ended drawing, the final result won't disappoint you. Working on the lips, you should understand how they look, otherwise you won't be able to make them look correct. Just spend some time and read anatomy and look through the pictures. Usually I tell my students to pay more attention to the drawing side, even when painting. A good underdrawing means a good painting. If you look at the old masters, you will notice that they were really great draftsmen and perfectly understood the head construction and the rules of light. In my opinion, it is very important to copy the old masters to get closer to their skills. Working on the lips, I'm using Venetian red and dark brown for the shadow in between the lips. Remember that the upper lip is in the shadow and the lower one in the light. It means that they have different colors and you can't work with the same pencil on them. Also, don't forget to shade under the lower lip. This will help to underline that the lip stands out, compared to the chin, which stays behind. After I work on a detail, I always smooth the values out. To draw the nose right, you need to remember about its structure. The nose, like all the other facial details, has many planes, which turn away towards the light source, and therefore we see it volumetric. I'm shading the down plane, that is in the shadow, because light doesn't come there at all. I use my dark brown and charcoal for that. The nostril is dark too, so don't forget to shade it. At the end of the lesson, I would like to sum up and maybe make some places more clear. First of all, I always underline the necessity of a good drawing. I guess you noticed that I talk mostly about correcting the drawing side. Anatomy, proportions, tone, they all belong to the drawing side. And when you understand those simple basics I talk about, you will become a very strong draftsman. To become better in drawing, you should practice more, and in my opinion, the old masters can give you a lot of skills and knowledge. Try to spend some time every day drawing a little bit. You can start from details of a face and then, after some practice, start a portrait. When drawing, don't forget to try to understand the structure of what you draw, and you will become better every time. The other important thing I want you to understand is the light. You need to understand that every subject has a volume, which is visible because of the light source. When a subject turns away or toward the light, it changes first of all the tone and secondly the color. That is why colors can be warmer or colder, darker or lighter. It happens mostly because of the changes in the light. Working on the ear, please don't forget that it is further away from the light source, and therefore darker than, for example, the nose. It is very important to compare the lights to figure out which ones are darker or lighter. It will be easier for you to look at the color, which is almost pure white, and compare it with the ear, for example, or any other part of the head to find out how dark it is compared to the white. At the same time, you should compare the color's shadows with the dark background. When you do it, you will notice that they are dark but far away from being black. Shadows on white or light surface are usually not too dark and almost never pure black, even though sometimes it might seem so. If you don't forget to compare, you will always get the right tones. This portrait is actually very good for beginners because you can see very well the light skin tones on the dark background, and at the same time you have a possibility to compare them with the light color and dark surroundings and therefore make less mistakes. If you look at the old masters' paintings, you will notice that many of them have the same tonal principle: dark surroundings, lighter faces and hands, and almost a white spot or clothes or anything else. At the end of the lesson I am making the final strokes, darken down and lighten up the areas which need it. Usually artists prefer to make the strongest accents at the end, and now it is time to do it. Put some highlights where it is necessary, for example, on the lightest part of the color. Make sure the head has different tones and the forehead is much lighter than the chin. I would also check the big proportions and make sure the portrait looks alike. Add some final strokes with a pointed pencil into the beard and hair to make the area more realistic. If you have time, you can enclose the source portrait and spend maybe 20–30 minutes working on the tiny details of the eyes, lips, or nose. You will notice that it helps a lot to understand the structure and the difference between values. If you had troubles working on the portrait, you could spend time once in a while and make sketches of facial details, learning how they look and work, and what planes and parts they consist of. When you understand it, you will be able to apply that knowledge in any portrait. You can use a photograph, a model, or make copies of the old masters, or any other artist you like. I hope this tutorial was helpful and educative. If you have any wishes or offers, I would be happy to get them via my webpage or email. It would be also nice to get your feedback because it helps me to improve my tutorials and add more new information and explanations.